Welcome to the Anarchy Gumbo Podcast. Michael W. Dean of the Freedom Fiends cooks up a very special blend of liberty, guns, sex, rock and roll, drugs, and thriving in spite of the state in an increasingly worrying world. All with a rotating cast of nifty guests who are also up in the middle of the night.
Hello, this is Michael W. Dean. We have a very special breaking news episode of the Anarchy Gumbo Podcast here. Today I'm talking with Tyler Lindholm. Say hi, Tyler.
Hey, guys.
He's calling from on the road somewhere on a busy life. I think he's in Nebraska, one state over. And Tyler is a national alternate delegate for the Wyoming Republican Party. And he has tales of what he says are massive fraud and or debauchery in the political process at the recent Wyoming Republican Convention, right?
That's correct. It was, they got a little stir crazy there, that's for sure.
So I guess I'll tell who I am in the Republican Party, and then you can tell who you are and why you care about all this and why you're involved, and then we'll talk about what you saw. On paper, officially, I am the Wyoming representative for the Republican Liberty Caucus, which is sort of the libertarian arm of the Republican Party. I haven't really been active in it for a while. I've kind of given up on politics, partly just because of things like this, I think, happening, and just realizing it's all a rigged game. It's rare that you actually hear how rigged it is on the inside from someone who was there. So talk about your involvement with the Wyoming Republican Party, and then we'll talk about what you saw at this event.
Okay. I've always been a Republican voter. I guess most of us in Wyoming are. To a certain extent, I'm a libertarian. Most, maybe anarcho-capitalist would be a better description. But, I've always kind of been interested in politics, and gone through, multiple. So far this year, I've gone through the multiple steps in order to get to the state convention, which include your precinct caucus and your county convention, et cetera, where the election of delegates, the passing of platforms and resolutions take place. This year I was elected as a precinct delegate for my precinct in Crook County, Wyoming, and from there I was elected as a county delegate at the county convention to go to the state convention. At the state convention I was elected as a national alternate delegate to go to the national convention in Tampa, Florida.
Okay, and what has been your experience with the Wyoming Republican Party and the Republican Party in general, as far as being solid or being, mucking behind the scenes and being tricky and faking things? Or has it been on the level in your understanding and experience up until this, or not?
Honestly, up until this event, there's only been, a couple incidents that have really stood out in my mind. I wouldn't ever say a political party is up on a straight and level. I don't think that's, I don't think that's a possibility. We actually had an incident that happened at our county convention Crook County was the first county to actually have its caucus, where all the precincts met for the first time, et cetera. We did a presidential straw poll at our county caucus. During this county caucus, we filled out our straw poll vote, et cetera. The chairman collected them all. Then he notified us that he was not going to be releasing the results of the straw poll because the state chairman wanted to release that information as a state later on once all the other counties had caucused together, it kind of sounded fishy to me, but I didn't really say anything at the time. Our county chairman decided that we'd go ahead and do a hand-raising vote just to see, so everybody could have an idea of who won the straw poll results. And Ron Paul won handily. Pretty well, I think the closest one to him was Santorum, and he was like 6 or 7 votes off, which for Crook County is a rather large number. We're not very well populated. Anyways, I went home that night, looked up the bylaws for the Republican Party, and they were wrong to do that. The straw poll results had to be released immediately following the tally at the actual caucus. So I notified my county chairman. He notified the state chairwoman, Tammy is her name, and she kind of drug her heels about it, saying that, well, this is the way we're going to do it, regardless of what the bylaws say.
What's her last name?
Tammy Hooper, I believe.
And when was this event you're talking about? This is not the one that we're doing the main talk about.
No,
right?
no,
Okay.
This is not the main one we're doing. It's just as dirty as, well, not quite as dirty. This was February 17th, I think. Yeah, I think it was February 17th was when our caucus
So what was the culmination of that? What happened with
The
that?
culmination of that is we ended up, I've got a lot of friends throughout the states that are Ron Paul supporters, et cetera, and had one of those friends put in a call to Tammy and say, you know what, this is not very transparent of the Wyoming Republican Party, and this is going to look like crap unless you change this, because she had notified all the rest of the counties to not release their straw poll results.
Huh.
After a little bit of pressure was put on, she decided to balk and ended up releasing the results immediately, which the results showed that Santorum beat Ron Paul by like 11 votes.
And you're saying that's not how it happened?
No, that's definitely not how it happened.
Ron Paul won the straw poll of Crook County, you're saying?
Ron Paul won the straw poll of Crook County by, I'd say, at least 6 or 7 votes. I've got the numbers at home, exactly what the hand-raising vote was. And their excuse was that several people had left. Well, I did see several people leave. I saw 2 people leave before we did the hand-raising vote. What they're saying is that 11 people left, and every one of them were Santorum supporters.
Okay,
is
so
what the numbers end up working.
so that's a little background on the general. I don't even know if that's anything about the Wyoming Republican Party. I think that's something about electoral politics, probably. But
yeah, correct.
So, what's the big news that you have that you witnessed firsthand, and when was it?
This happened this last weekend, which was the Wyoming Republican Party held its convention last Saturday, which was the 14th, I believe. Anyways, it started on the 12th with platforms and resolution subcommittees meeting together and working out for the state. And we went forward from there. Immediately right off the bat, you know, I'll go ahead and say this right now, Ron Paul and his delegates were very well organized. It was completely grassroots. We had no help from the campaign whatsoever. We did ask for help because Ron Paul visited every state around Wyoming, but not Wyoming. But, you know, he's a busy guy. He doesn't have the money Romney does.
My joke is that Wyoming is invisible to the rest of the country, and that's why I live here. I mean, when you look at the national weather on TV, the weather lady covers Wyoming with her head and gives the weather for all the states around it.
No, yeah, you know, and see, I think you're right. I mean, that's why we all like Wyoming, because nobody knows we're actually here.
Yeah, it's a giant state, and it's got about the same population as Sacramento, California, and D.C. can't even find it on a map. When Obama was campaigning recently, or, you know, doing a talking tour, a lying tour recently, they switched Colorado and Wyoming on their map by accident. So if D.C. can't find it, that's why we live here. Okay, go on. What happened?
Okay. Immediately from the onset of the platforms and resolutions, we were the only ones that were there at the platforms and resolutions committees. You could tell that there was a very heavy Ron Paul presence, which I noticed it because a lot of those people I'd been in contact with, but the Romney people started noticing it. From there, on Friday, they did the bylaws and the nominating committees.
Where was this?
This was in Cheyenne.
At what event center?
The Little America.
Okay.
Anyways, they did the bylaws and nominating committees, and the nominating committee did not quite turn out for the Romney crowd, or the establishment, as I like to call them, as they thought. We had made sure that we had, you know, everybody tried to push to get on the nominating committee, because that's, the nominating committee is the committee that actually makes a difference for national delegates and who gets elected. Immediately right off the get-go, and I wasn't on the nominating committee, so this is all just secondhand from what I've heard from other delegates. The Romney supporters wanted to put forth that on the ballot to be released to all the delegates on Saturday, they would have a preferred list of delegates, okay, in ranking order. And that was going to be the list that the nominating committee recommends to the rest of the delegates on who to vote for. It's not very transparent, and it's not fair. The Ron Paul types obviously voted against it. Didn't matter. The Romneys, the establishment got that through.
Okay, it's not fair, but does it also violate GOP bylaws?
I'm not exactly sure on that, because that's happened in every state thus far. They did it in North Dakota, and they were really dirty about it in North Dakota, because what they did in North Dakota was they handed out the ballot and only had the names of the delegates that were on the nominating committee's preferred list. and then they had a bunch of blank spaces underneath where you could write in people's names.
And did they count the ones that were written in there?
Well, who knows? It was just pretty much their slate made it all the way through.
Okay, so back to Wyoming. What happened?
Back to Wyoming. It was actually it didn't work out for the establishment as they thought it would, because they got it through that they could have a recommended list. So they started their voting process on the nominating committee. Everybody got to vote for their candidates they wanted to see on the preferred list, etc. 9 out of 14 of those people were Ron Paul supporters. So It didn't work out at all for the Romney campaign there. And then I think it was 3 out of the 14 for the alternate list were Ron Paul supporters.
So what happened that you think was dirty beyond that?
Beyond that, that's when things got dirty, and this is kind of a build-up to that. At that point, I think, is when the Romney campaign went into freak-out mode, that they might lose the national delegates. So Saturday comes around, and the Ron Paul types were all feeling pretty good about Saturday because we got our names on the list. Saturday comes around, and we start the convention process, which is pretty much platforms and resolutions in the morning. And they have guest speakers throughout: Matt Mead, Cynthia Lummis, Enzi Barrasso.
And that's our governor and our senators and our senator and congressman.
Correct. And they even had Dick Cheney roll in, which was kind of, I mean, everybody was giving their support to Romney. That's what everybody was.
Which, for those who don't know, I mean, everyone knows who Dick Cheney is, but for those who don't know, he's from Wyoming. I mean, he grew up in a house that's about 8 blocks from where I'm sitting in Casper.
Correct, yeah. He's a Wyoming born and bred.
You go to a lot of restaurants, and there's a picture of him, signed picture on the wall in the restaurant. He's, small town boy makes good kind of crap.
Right. Crap is exactly
small town sociopath makes good.
He was actually, I think, 3 weeks off of his heart transplant, and they rolled him in to give his Mitt Romney endorsement.
You're listening to the Anarchy Gumbo Podcast, a tasty stew of freedom and fun. Subscribe at kittyfeet.com. That's KITTYFEET.com.
So on Saturday, like I said, we started the platforms and resolutions and passed and sent a lot of those on, and they brought in a lot of speakers. Governor Matt Mead and all the likes were giving their support to Mitt Romney, and then they brought in Josh Romney, who is Mitt Romney's son. Josh got up and gave a speech about how awesome his dad is, etc. And I mean, it was just pretty much everybody kind of nod their head, clap kind of deal. But then at the end of his speech, this is when shit got really dirty. I don't know if I didn't mean to swear. Sorry about that.
You can swear on this podcast, although this may go viral. So, who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people are going to hear Tyler Lindholm cussing.
Well, they know Tyler Lindholm, though.
Hey, what I say is angry times call for angry words, so feel free,
Exactly. Josh Romney stood up in front of the entire convention of 400-plus people and held up a voting slate. A voting slate, for those that don't know, would be the number of delegates that are available, which for Wyoming at the time was 14 delegates. He held up a list of 14 names and said that these are the candidates that his father has endorsed and would like everybody to endorse. And he said some crap about being a real American and voting this way. So at that point, everybody was kind of stunned. We kind of passed around the idea of calling a point of order and having the sergeant-at-arms kick Josh Romney out.
So I guess being a real American to Josh Romney means backing any candidate except the one that upholds the Constitution of the United States?
Exactly. And see, there's the thing. I mean, they're putting up this list of names. I mean, how many people actually knew everybody on that list of names? I thought we were, electing people that would best represent you at the national convention.
Now, who were these names? Were they presidential candidates?
No, all the names were people running for national delegate, which would be Governor Matt Mead, Cynthia Lummis, the superintendent. The list goes on. It was all
delegate, meaning the people who choose who that state. Explain that.
Support for president.
Yeah, so that's who votes in the Electoral College.
No, the Electoral College is a different facility altogether. The national delegates go to the Republican National Convention this August and stand for whichever candidate they may choose, and that's the delegate count goes towards each presidential nominee. How many ever delegates they got, they have to have. I think it's 1,144 delegates in order to get the Republican.
Okay, so I mean, I've always thought they make this stuff so complicated that it's voodoo math to begin with. But what are you saying precisely happened that was dirty here?
What was dirty was that Josh Romney held up a list of candidates for national delegates and told the entire convention hall, if you're a real American, vote for these candidates.
Okay.
And that they were endorsed by his dad, et cetera, and they were all good Mitt Romney supporters, et cetera. And that's against the bylaws of the Republican National GOP.
What does it violate?
What it violates is introducing a slate to the delegates, introducing instructions on how to vote, basically.
So in other words, it's not chosen by the people at all.
Correct. It's not chosen by the people. There's no way everybody in that room is going to know all 14 people. I mean, some of those people were, well-known names, Governor Matt Mead, Congresswoman Cynthia Lummis, et cetera. But there's a lot of people on that list that were just your atypical Romney supporter.
So did people vote according to this list?
People did vote according to this list. Overwhelmingly, people voted according to this list, which was fairly disgusting, but that's not where things got really dirty.
Okay, where did things get really dirty? And who got them really dirty?
Things got really dirty after we had cast our ballots. It started, it took, I don't know, it was like 5:30 or 6 o'clock that evening before we actually heard the vote totals and who won which seat. But while that was going on, there was a lot of rumors flying about what was actually happening behind the scenes. And what had actually happened behind the scenes is we had a person, the national committee woman for the state of Wyoming, purposely voted twice.
What's her name?
Jan Larimer.
How did she vote twice? And how is that legal?
It's not. She managed to get her hands on 2 ballots, and she filled both of them out and turned them in so a lot of people could see her do that.
So vote early and vote often?
Vote early and vote often. Vote or die.
And people saw her do this? And
people saw her do this, absolutely, and that was exactly her intent.
Were they happy that she did it?
Well, I don't know if they were happy that she did it, but I believe the reason that she did it was to throw the vote in case the Romney delegates didn't get their spot. Then the Romney campaign could call on a revote because the vote was screwed from the get-go.
Who did she vote for?
Oh, she's a Romney supporter.
So how did this affect Ron Paul?
This affected Ron Paul as far as what Jan Larimer did. Ron Paul would have won several delegate spots. Then, she could have easily called a revote, which would have been successful for her because after the vote, a lot of people left. A lot of the delegates went ahead and left.
I'm getting the feeling that the national GOP would probably rather have Obama get a second term than admit that Ron Paul exists.
I think they honestly would too. I think they view them both with the same salt, which is obviously wrong. But there it is. But that's even then, Michael. That's not all of it. It gets dirtier from there.
Tell me, Tyler.
The Wyoming state chairwoman. We have the chairman is a woman Wyoming.
What's her name?
Tammy Hooper.
Okay.
She actually voted, which she's not a delegate for any county, so she has no right to vote in the national delegate process.
Wow.
And she actually voted. And then on top of that, we had the national committee man, who was also not a delegate, also voted.
What did they do with the Ron Paul votes?
With the Ron Paul votes, and see, that's funny you bring that up because while all this was going on, there was a lot of people making accusations and throwing stuff around that the Ron Paul types had voted twice, and the Ron Paul types were attempting to throw the vote and stuff like that, which, of course, didn't happen. None of the Ron Paul types, did anything like that at all, and yet it turns out it was the Romney types that were doing it. Not only the Romney types, but we're talking our state chairman, national committee man and woman. I mean, incredible.
Do you think anything will come of this?
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. Everybody I keep telling about this is rightfully disgusted by it and disgusted by what happened. And everybody can see right through, their intentions. Everybody knows that they did it for one purpose. That's if they would have lost those national delegate spots, they could have called for a revote. I think, or at least what I hope is going to happen because of this is, or at least what I'm trying to influence to happen, is that we get more people to come actually out to these county caucuses and county conventions and hopefully onto the state convention that are supporters of liberty, so that we can get the establishment out of there where it's impossible for them to do something like this again.
I think that trying to fix the establishment with the establishment is put it this way. Being involved in the Wyoming Republican Party made me an anarchist, but
right.
I'm a peace-loving anarchist, but and I'm going to go vote for Ron Paul. I basically have become a non-voting person because I feel like it's all corrupt to the core. They say if voting changed anything, it'd be illegal. And but I'm going to go vote for Ron Paul just to put another tick mark in the popularity contest that it sounds like probably won't be counted anyway.
Right.
I'm anxious to get this information out and get it up. And you got any more? Is there more to this story?
Yeah, actually, we did. We were able to stick it to them a little bit. The Romney slate was elected as national delegates, but what they weren't expecting was every alternate elected was a Ron Paul supporter. So even though we didn't cheat and we didn't rig the vote or anything like that, or we didn't announce our slate to the entire convention hall or anything like that, we still came within single digits of actually being national delegates.
Wow.
So I do think that if people are Ron Paul supporters and whatnot, and they can become, they can swallow a lot of the rhetoric that goes on at, stuff like this. I mean, we had people there from Laramie that were there. These two guys were there, really respected them for showing up because, A, they were very cool people. They were Ron Paul supporters, liberty-minded type people. But these guys had hair way down past their ass. At showing up at the Wyoming Republican Convention, that took balls. And I was very impressed that they weren't hiding a damn thing. It was very impressive, and you could see the just looks of disgust on on people's faces.
I look fairly conservative, and I think I could show up there in a suit, and they'd look into my soul and think there's something wrong with me being there because I believe in truth and justice.
Right. And see, that's the thing is what we absolutely have to do. And I mean, in 2008, there was only 15 people that showed up for the Wyoming Republican Convention that were Ron Paul supporters. This year, we had close to 100. So it's definitely a growing movement, and I definitely think in coming years that we get a lot more people interested. There's no reason why the establishment has to stay where it's at.
Well, I think Ron Paul has already won by spreading the idea of liberty. I think he's made 10 million new libertarians,
right?
Or more,
absolutely.
Or more.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think it's freedom and liberty is very popular. I mean, people like the idea of saying no to taxes, and people like the idea of being able to do what they want without the government boot on their throat.
And, if you talk like that now, if you talk like the Founding Fathers, you're called a terrorist now.
Right, exactly. Honestly, I should have video recorded a lot of the responses I got because I'm not going to hide who I am just because I'm at the Republican convention. And a lot of people would ask me, well, how do you feel about the whole drug scenario and whatnot? And, I told them the truth. It's 40 years of a failed war on drugs. It's not working. We need to legalize. And this, telling this to the establishment of Republicans, that's a very unpopular thing to do. But
yeah, well, I don't take drugs, but my daughter died of cancer, and she smoked pot to get some relief while she was dying of leukemia. So I think anybody who'd want to put anybody in a cage for smoking an herb is an immoral person.
Right, and evil. Inherently evil, I believe. Absolutely, man.
Well, is that the whole story of this?
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story, though. I mean, we're going to have some, hopefully, new news soon.
I'm psyched to go get this up on the internet. I'm going to do it right now because today is April 19th, and that was the day of the first shot of the Revolutionary War. So I'm going to go contribute my bullet in audio form of this recording of you.
Get them, man. Get them.
Are you one of the 12% of Americans who still approves of our government? Then we need your help to force the other 88% into compliance. When you're not busy spying on your neighbors or squinting at everyone, tell anyone who will listen why more government is a good thing. You'll get a warm and fuzzy feeling demanding more taxes and arguing in favor of gun control while militarizing our police, because folks just aren't smart enough to handle real freedom.
That is so square. Check out the additional Freedom Fiends show, Freedom Fiends Live, every Sunday on the LRN.FM streaming feed or satellite radio.
Broadcasting live and worldwide from a windowless bunker inside a mountain near an undisclosed location in the rural Wild West of the occupied states of America.
Freedom Fiends Live expands on the Fiends' weekly Wednesday podcasts, but now we're kicking the hornet's nest live. Talk back to the backtalkers every Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. East Coast time. From the makers of Guns and Weed, The Road to Freedom. Freedom Fiends Live. Call in soon before we get droned.
Thank you for listening to the Anarchy Gumbo Podcast. Subscribe at kittyfeet.com. That's KITTYFEET.com. All with a rotating guest on a spit, barbecued for your pleasure.
Outtakes, yay.